welcome. I'm Stephen Cole. You're watching Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, Russia.
It will not just be a grave mistake, it will be an expensive mistake.
US Secretary of State John Kerry is warning Moscow change course on Ukraine or pay the price. The longer the Ukrainian crisis continues, the higher the cost to Russia's already stagnant economy. We'll be counting the cost of Putin's Ukrainian adventure with the economist and energy specialist Cornelia Meyer, who's CEO of MRL Corporation. Also this week, just 4 years ago, this Mediterranean economy on the periphery of Europe nearly forced the Eurozone into collapse. We're talking about Greece, of course. This week, there were signs of green shoots, but we'll be asking if this early optimism is in fact just smoke and mirrors. And we'll be talking to Dimitrios Droutsas, MEP and former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Plus, put your crampons away. Everest is closed to climbers for 2014. We'll be taking a look at why trouble on top of the world could prove a wake-up call for the mountaineering business. Russia is the 8th largest economy in the world, and it also has the world's largest reserves of natural gas. Russia also provides 1/3 of Europe's energy needs, yet after its foray into Crimea and increased activity in eastern Ukraine, its economy is facing the most difficult conditions since the 2008 financial crisis. Well, so how expensive is the bill going to be in the end for Russia? Already, it has seen capital flight of $63 billion in the first 3 months of this year as investors dump the ruble. And that hemorrhaging of the economy is predicted to continue. The Kremlin has also earmarked almost $7 billion in economic aid to Crimea this year. Also this week, the Russian finance minister predicted the economy may see zero growth this year because of the unrest in Ukraine. Peter Sharp in Moscow has more now on the potential fallout to the Russian economy.
They call this Moscow City. It's the financial heart of the capital, and it's where the Russian money men are counting the cost of Vladimir Putin's annexation of Crimea and the crisis in Ukraine. And the cost has been staggering. More than $100 billion has fled the country in the last 3 months. The entire economy has contracted by 0.5%. And if this goes on, economists are saying it could lead to recession and zero growth. It's the fall in the value of the ruble. It's the threat of sanctions. And even big foreign ventures are now being affected. In Petersburg, the Ford Motor Company, which is in partnership with a Russian automobile company, has been forced to lay off 700 workers solely as a direct result of the fallout from Crimea and the Ukraine. It was only last February, 6 weeks ago, when the closing ceremony of the Sochi Winter Olympics took place, a glittering affair. Putin plowed in $50 billion of money into the games. It was supposed to be a showcase for a new Russia, a showcase for its economy. Well, forget it. Russia's never been more isolated politically and economically since the very heart of the Cold War.
That was Peter Sharp in Moscow. Cornelia Meyer is an economist and CEO of business consultancy MRL Corporation based in London. I asked her about the impact sanctions might be already having on Russia's economy.
We've seen that sanctions only work if they have a big impact on the economy, as the economy is quite small. And if the sanctioners are able to get the middle classes of the sanctioned country aligned with them against their own government. And in Russia, I don't think that would be the case. The Russian economy is big, and the Russian middle classes are incredibly nationalistic.
At the moment, the sanctions aren't that serious, are they? They're more sort of economic wrist slapping more than anything else.
Economic wrist slapping, they're tough talk and no bite behind them.
So political wrist slapping at the moment. Why is Europe, do you think, holding back from imposing serious sanctions?
Well, as I said before, European economies are so interlinked with the Russian economy. If you look at Germany, all the big German energy or chemicals consortia get their gas from Gazprom. If you look at places like the United Kingdom, Russia's issuers are important in the capital markets. So, and BP, one of the major British companies, has a big stake in Rosneft, in one of the major Russian companies. So there is just very little economic incentive on the side of the Europeans to go tough on Russia here.
And of course, Russia knows this full well. The country pushing for tougher sanctions harder than anybody, of course, is America. But America trades far less with Russia than Europe, doesn't it? I mean, it's not even a quarter of the amount that Europe trades with Russia. So they'd suffer far less economic blowback than Europe if serious sanctions were imposed.
Absolutely, and America has no strategic industry that's really strongly involved there. Although they have some companies in the aeronautical sector, in the automotive sector, who are started to have investments in Russia. And guess what? I'm sure they're pushing very hard on Mr. Obama not to impose more sanctions.
Okay, so if the sanctions aren't that serious, the political problems of the annexation of Crimea could pose greater problems for Moscow, couldn't they? I'm thinking about a record capital flight, and growth forecasts have been sharply downgraded because of the turmoil.
Absolutely, I think that is really where things bite. If you have capital flight, and I think we've moved beyond Crimea. Sadly, we have moved beyond Crimea. We really need to see what's now happening in the eastern Ukraine, and I think it's in President Putin's interest that we see some calming down. You know, in Donetsk and all these places in the eastern Ukraine. Because it's bad for the Russian economy. It's very bad for the Ukrainian economy, and I think nobody really is that interested in having the conflict escalate.
And or are there signs that the problems in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, have they slowed growth in Russia, or are they slowing growth?
I think they've so far not slowed growth in Russia. The country I would really be concerned about is the Ukraine. It's a country whose economy is on its knees. They have now, it looks like they will be getting the 17 billion loan from the IMF. They've just been given $1 billion by the US, but really they need more money, and they need to reform their agricultural sector, their banking sector, and their energy sector.
Is Russia then too focused on energy, it's a one-trick pony, and they haven't used the money from the natural resources to diversify sufficiently?
Well, you're talking about Russia.
Yeah.
Russia, yes, is too much into the natural resources game, which is mining and energy, and needs to do more, and they have a push to do more in manufacturing. The Ukraine really needs to overhaul its industrial sector. They have very inefficient steel producing sites at the east of the Ukraine. They have they make, for instance, all the helicopter engines for the Russian Air Force, which also again a very old plant. They need to reform their agricultural sector. The Ukraine could be the grain chamber for Europe.
Now, we were talking about sanctions and possible impact. If Europe, i.e. Germany, decide they will take tougher sanctions, what could those tougher sanctions consist of?
Well, they would probably they would have to be on the banking side. That always bites. I doubt that Germany would really want to have sanctions on the energy side, because she still gets about 30 to 35% of her gas imports from Russia, from Gazprom. So I don't think she really is in a position to impose sanctions there. So again, their hands will be tied. It would be exports, imports, manufacturing sector, banking.
Last question. A speculative one. Do you detect a will in Europe, a financial will in Europe to punish Russia?
I detect a political will to punish Russia, and I detect a financial and economic reluctance to upset the apple cart.
Well, money always talks. Cornelia Meyer, CEO of MRL, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, talks between the United States and Japan on a Pacific Rim trade pact have stalled this week. The breakdown spoiled any chances of a showcase deal being agreed during Obama's visit to Tokyo. Dominic Kane reports.
A day of pomp and ceremony in places, but hard talking behind the scenes. President Obama came to Tokyo with hopes of heralding a new Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. A free trade initiative that is central to the White House's pivot to Asia and integral to the Japanese government's economic growth strategy. But it looks as though Mr. Obama will leave with no deal. Japan's economy minister has said neither side has reached a basic accord. The proposed new TPP would do away with trade tariffs in 12 Asia-Pacific countries. Collectively, their economies account for around 40% of global output and around 30% of global trade. The population of the 12 countries is near the 790 million mark. Opposition to the TPP in the United States has come from two main sectors. The automotive industry says Japan has the most closed market of any developed nation and says the TPP proposal does not go far enough to open it up. While the farming lobby has complained about the protection the Japanese government gives to its farmers. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has said food is an issue of national security. The collective gross domestic product of Japan and the United States is around $21 trillion. Politically and militarily, the two countries are firm allies, something the President has reaffirmed on this visit. But with powerful lobbies in both countries urging economic protectionism, this TPP proposal may have proved too hard to swallow.
And still to come on counting the cost, trying to revive an economy while at the same time meeting strict debt targets. Is Greece's economy trying to accelerate, but with the handbrake still on? And is talk of a recovery simply Act 2 of a continuation of the Greek economic tragedy? It's now almost 60 years since the first solar power cell was invented, and harnessing the power of the sun is getting cheaper all the time, as Rob Reynolds reports now from California.
Another solar panel goes up on a rooftop in Los Angeles. LA is the #1 U.S. city for solar energy, producing 132 megawatts. Officials want 20% of the city's electricity to come from the sun by 2020, and California is committed to having 1 million solar rooftops by 2016. As California goes, so goes the world. Solar power is at last really taking off, says the head of Europe's leading solar energy research institute.
Solar energy is in a very good state today because cost has come down so much that it is competitive and it is much below household electricity rates.
The sun has been the principal source of energy for life on Earth for 3.5 billion years. But it was only 60 years ago that people figured out how to turn sunlight into electricity. In the portentous tones of a 1950s newsreel, Bell Labs announced the first working photovoltaic cell.
In this modern age, men have at last harnessed the sun with the Bell solar battery. Here is one mounted in a protective case of clear plastic.
90-year-old physicist Mort Prince is the last living member of the team that achieved the solar energy breakthrough.
It's amazing what has happened in the last 10 years especially, but in the beginning it was very difficult. You had to educate the public to what is this device, what can it do? And then nobody ever heard about this device.
The power of the sun, together with wind and other renewable sources, may be the key to controlling climate change caused by industrialization. But experts say solar power development must be speeded up.
For 10% solar coverage we need 10,000 gigawatts. And at the moment, we are installing 50 gigawatts per year.
Indeed, man has at last dipped his hand into the sun and drawn down a spark to warm the hearts of men.
Solar energy is all grown up, but it still has a long way to go.
Earlier this month, Greece ended its self-imposed exile from the bond markets and sold 5-year notes in an offering that was 7 times oversubscribed. And on Wednesday, it recorded a primary budget surplus for the first time since its economic crisis began 4 years ago. Yet, despite the optimism for investors, the figures tell a different story. So let's take a look at them. Well, in Greece, unemployment remains at a catastrophic 26.7%. Public indebtedness has surged. It remains close to 180% of GDP, which is the highest ratio in the 18-member euro area. Analysts argue that figure is unsustainable for such a small economy like Greece. And the bitter austerity medicine with big spending cuts has taken a human toll too, especially in healthcare. A recent article in The Lancet magazine found rising infant mortality rates and even the return of malaria. Well, Dimitrios Droutsas is a Greek lawyer and politician. He served as Minister of Foreign Affairs of Greece between 2010 and 11, and that was during the height of the crisis. He's also an MEP, where he represents the socialist PASOK party. I asked him if he thought the crisis was now over.
I think one can surely say that we see signs of a clear recovery of the Greek economy. We have a budgetary surplus, a primary budgetary surplus. We had a successful exit of Greece to the international financial markets. I think that these are clear signs that the Greek economy, after 6 very difficult years of recession, is now on its way out to recovery.
Is that seriously wishful thinking? Because in 2012, Greece came very close to a Grexit, didn't it, from the single currency. Is that crisis over, really? Because Greece does seem to be a long way away from being financially viable.
I would not say that the crisis is over, neither for Greece nor maybe for the euro in its entirety. But it is important that we have positive signs now for the Greek economy. It is, I think, important to have positive signs for Greece. It is important also for the psychology of the Greek people, because let us not forget that the Greek people, the vast majority of Greek people, are still going through very tough times, and the good results we have now are only due to the sacrifices of the Greek people.
How would you describe then the social fallout from this crisis? Because joblessness will take years to overcome, and austerity measures have caused real problems for many people, haven't they?
Again, I want to emphasize that the good news that we had in the last days are important, but of course these are numbers, these are statistics. The life, the reality for the Greek people, for the majority of the Greek people, is of course different and very difficult. I would invite everybody just to visit maybe a Greek hospital or a Greek school to see what the real conditions are. So it is quite a way in front of Greece and the Greek people for real recovery, and this is, I think, the big challenge for all of us.
Public debt is still, what, 175% of GDP this year. That's a huge burden for any country to carry. How much more help will Greece need?
This is up to the economic experts to decide, and I think according to the results and the developments we will see in the months to come. But I want to be very clear with my own personal opinion about the Greek debt. If we want to have a viable debt for Greece, then I think the only efficient and effective solution would be a generous haircut again of the Greek debt. And this is something that politicians in Europe, in the Eurozone, must, I think, realize. And the sooner we have the right decisions, the better, and the sooner we can see a real recovery, not only of Greece, but also of the whole Eurozone.
How much is up to Greece to decide its own recovery? Because what really matters now is that Greece has changed its economic ways. And there does seem to be signs, there are signs of resistance to more economic reforms, doesn't there?
Certainly Greece needs most of all not cuts and austerity measures. We need here in Greece real structural reforms. We need also a reform of our political system, if you want. This is the big challenge, and we must abandon this thinking of strict austerity measures, and we must concentrate much more on the real structural reforms here in Greece. And yes, you are right, this is in the hands of Greece, the Greek political class and the Greek people, and I hope we will soon see more decisive steps into this direction in Greece.
Recently, Greece went back to the market, didn't it? Should we beware of Greeks bearing bonds?
It was important, and a very important positive signal, the fact that Greece again went to the international financial markets. But again, here we must be careful, we must be realistic, and we have to do whatever is needed in order to make all of these successes, recent successes, viable, meaning that we need to see a continuation of this also in the coming years.
Lastly, do you think investors may now be warming up to a possible Greek economic resurrection, or is that too wishful thinking?
I sincerely hope, and I think that international investors will make the right interpretation of these positive signs and signals of the recovery of the Greek economy, and that international investors will come again to Greece and invest into the future of the country. We need economic growth here in Greece. This is, I think, the key answer and the solution to the crisis here in Greece. Economic growth means that we need structural reforms in Greece, and we need more foreign international investments. And I'm very positive and hopeful that international investors will come back to Greece.
Dimitrios Droutsas, a Greek lawyer and politician, many thanks to you for joining us on Counting the Cost.
Thank you very much.
Let's close the show on a high but also a sad note from Everest. This week, the world's highest mountain closed for business, quite literally. Guides known as Sherpas are refusing to scale the mountain following the deaths of 16 of their colleagues. They were killed in the worst accident in the mountain's history. The Sherpas want better insurance and medical cover and a fairer share of the revenues that come to the Nepalese government from commercial mountaineering. Well, since it was first conquered in 1953, more than 4,000 people have climbed the world's highest mountain. From base camp at just over 5,000 metres, most follow the South Col route. This was used by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay when they reached the top 61 years ago, 8,848 metres above sea level. The accident happened on the Khumbu icefall. Huge blocks of ice hang over the main route up the mountain, and one of those came away with fatal consequences. The guides have to spend long periods on this dangerous stretch, preparing the way for the climbers to pass and ferrying equipment back and forth. And that is our show for this week, but there is a lot more for you online at aljazeera.com. Click through to the programmes link, and from there you'll find the Counting the Cost page with all our previous episodes for you to catch up on. And then to get in touch, you can tweet either me at Cole_Stephen, our business editor at Abid Oliver Ali, and don't forget to use the hashtag Counting the Cost as well, or drop us an email. Countingthecost@aljazeera.net is our address. But that is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Stephen Cole. From the whole team, thanks very much for watching, and coming up on Al Jazeera, the news is next.